Hello, it's Monday for you, but it's not for me because I'm pre-recording this. I will be gone at the General Council all week, and so I'm trying to prepare in advance for the devotions/meditations for the week. We're going to be connecting to a message that was preached on August the 1st. Also, two segments of this were preached earlier in the month of June, late in June, and then in the middle of July. So this is the third part of probably a 4-part message entitled One Day at 3 o'clock. Today we just want to come away with a meditation based upon some of the introductory material. And so we're going to jump right in. I'm going to try to shorten this up a bit. See that I've taken just under 1 minute for the introduction. One day at 3 o'clock. The explanation for that is that the Jews prayed 3 times a day, once in the morning, once at 3, and once in the evening. And it's at the 3 o'clock prayer that we find the events of Acts chapter 3. Acts chapter 3 at 3 o'clock, unfolding what seems to be a ho-hum regular day, going to the temple for the time of prayer. And we find out that something has been happening leading up to this. And that is that the disciples have been focused in consecration or devotion or addiction to the things of God. And we find that when you consecrate yourselves, we're going to connect then with a statement made in the book of Joshua. I believe it's chapter 2 verse 5 or chapter 3 verse 5. It says, consecrate yourselves, and tomorrow the Lord your God will do amazing things or mighty things among you. Consecration leads to something powerful. Now I may be rehearsing this material for some of you, but for some of you maybe come across this for the first time. Consecration or devotion or addiction seen as a negative term, but it's speaking of the intensity in which a person consecrates, devotes themselves to the things of God. Here's what happens when you consecrate yourself. It leads to something powerful happening. Now, what are the things that are involved in consecration? Here's what the early believers did in the 2nd chapter of Acts, verse 42 and onward. They addicted themselves to the disciples' doctrine, the teaching of the disciples. So they rehearsed this over and over, became familiar with it. They addicted themselves to fellowship. They connected themselves together as believers, sharing a common faith. So they spent time with one another, worshiping the Lord, building one another up, enjoying fellowship. Another thing they did is they met house to house daily, breaking bread. Talk about being addicted to each other. They spent time breaking bread. There's something that happens when people have a meal together. Their hearts open and a bridge of communication is built. In the Jewish community, to break bread with someone was to make a bread covenant with them and basically say, you have my back, I have yours. To have a meal together was a very important and strategic thing. And then finally, prayer. And there are all kinds of prayer. There is thanksgiving. We enter into his presence with thanksgiving, into his courts with praise. There is worship, adoration, supplication, making requests known, interceding for people, hearing from God. There's all kinds of prayer that happens. Now, what happens when people addict themselves to the disciples' doctrine or teaching, fellowshipping together, breaking bread together and celebrating the Lord's table, and involving themselves in the intimate practice before the Lord in his presence of prayer? Can you sense everything coming together? Something powerful can happen. And here's the final thing we need to consider. Grace events happen as a result of alignment and action. What happens when we addict ourselves to these things? When we align ourselves along these lines that are laid out in Scripture? grace events, grace eruptions, powerful releases of God's grace happens in the midst of us. And here's what we need to do. Take advantage of them. We need to jump on those opportunities and then continue the momentum. Wow. Well, maybe that's a lot to consider today, but I just wanted to take a couple minutes to review those things and let those begin to pick your curiosity, to take those in, mix them with faith, and come away from today with at least, Lord, how can I be addicted to you? How can I deepen my connection with you along these lines? Because I want to align with you, and I want to see grace events happen in my life, in my family, at my job, wherever I go, and in the context of our congregation meeting together. I want to see grace events happen, and then I want to see us take full advantage of them. Well, that's a lot to consider today. God's grace and peace be upon you as you think on these things. And we'll see you tomorrow, Tuesday, to continue on connecting into some thoughts of our message on Sunday. Until then, Lord bless you.